special Dharma talk format. Apparently I need to put my template notes in a different color. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Always such a wonderful place to be. It's really miraculous, I think, how often the weather is absolutely perfect. So we are blessed. Before I get started, I will, as we often do, offer some acknowledgments. First, an offering of gratitude to White Heron Sangha for sharing their beautiful space with us. Such a wonderful second home for us to have here on Sundays, and just a lot of gratitude. So thank you, White Heron, and those of you who are members, thank you for representing. And actually, we were here last Sunday evening as a panel talking about our practice, and that was a lot of fun. So thank you, Regent, for organizing that. It was enlightening in a particular way for me because I got to hear everybody sort of speak spontaneously about their practice and say what it was that they wanted others to know or to hear from their perspective, and that was to put it in the colloquial sense, very cool. So I enjoyed that a lot. Second, I'd like to pay my respects, as we do, to the Northern Chumash, whose ancestral land we occupy, and they are still here. So we pay our respects to the Chumash, past, present, and future. Also like to pay my respects to the original Japanese and Chinese immigrants who came to the United States and brought the Dharma with them. They have been here a long time we're here a long time practicing the Buddha Dharma before the dominant culture took notice, and before many of us who come from different ancestral backgrounds became involved with the Dharma. So we owe them a debt of gratitude also. And I got to spend some time also last weekend with the Jodo Shinshu Sangha down the road here in Avila, and that was a great time at the Obon Festival. And I spent some time actually with their Sangha beforehand, helping them prepare. Was really, really a treat. And I asked Bryce, who is their board chair, if she got the opportunity to pass along my thanks to them, and express my gratitude for how kind they all were to me, who just kind of wandered into the middle of their very hectic preparation, and they just put me right to work. So I always appreciate that. I'd rather be busy, as Koshi knows. Jump in, let's go. And then my last acknowledgement, I want to offer a vow of appreciation to all the Buddhas and ancestors of our Zen lineage. I know you feel, as I do, that the opportunity to study and practice the Buddha way is it's a precious thing, and I really appreciate that it didn't have to come down to us and be here for us to practice. So, and I started out by greeting you all as Buddhas and ancestors, and I want all of you to keep in mind that the Buddhas and ancestors, many of them may not have thought that they were Buddhas and ancestors back when they were practicing, and you may be Buddhas and ancestors one day too, whether you think about that or not, but maybe that's something to consider when you think about the value and importance of your practice. So, and now, let's have a talk. So last Sunday, we were right here having a Dharma chat led by Derek, and in that format, as you probably all know, one of our Zen students talks a little bit about his practice, and then proposes or offers a question for us to have a Dharma conversation about. And Derek talked a bit about his practice, as you do, and then talked about his experience with the question of how does one go from practicing on the cushion to taking your practice with you into the rest of your life, into your everyday life. So I wanted to use that as a sort of jumping off point to talk about some things this morning related to how does one do that, and then to offer something that I recently became acquainted with, that I realized I had been practicing with but didn't know it under the name that I'll introduce to you. It's called Menmitsu no Kafu, and something that I had only just recently run across and thought, wow, that's interesting. I've been practicing with that in a different way, not under that name, but I want to talk about that and sort of present that and unpack it a little bit. So, let's start at the beginning then. So when we begin our Zen practice, as we often do, we may tend to consider our practice something that we only do when we're on the cushion. That seems like a logical place for people to start in defining what their practice is and what it means. And when we are a beginner, we may tell people, I'm working on my Zen practice, or I'm developing the Zen practice. And by that, we typically mean I'm trying to learn to meditate, I'm trying to sit. And we may start out reading books about Zen, and have wanted to expand our practice beyond our intellectual curiosity or interest, and we may start sitting, as I did after reading enough books that I finally realized I need to actually do some of this stuff. If you read enough books, you'll eventually get the fact that Zen is actually about action, about doing something, rather than knowing something or believing something. So eventually we sit down, but sitting on our own can be tough, as we all know, even after we've been doing it a while. So we may then start to look for a group to sit with. And I suspect that's how we all eventually end up sitting. Or in some cases, we may not have a group to sit with, and so we create one. So thank you, Sensei, for that formation many years ago. And without it, I'm sure we wouldn't all be here. So then as things progress, we find ourselves sitting with a group, maybe a Zen group and a Zendo, like our group, and maybe studying the Dharma with other like-minded folks, and we may go on some retreats, and so our definition of what our practice is expands to include more things, more activities and people and locations. But still, I think it's not uncommon for people to feel like there's a gap between all of those things, which are definitely our practice, and the rest of our life, everything else, and that the gap has to be crossed in some way. So one of the ways that we typically learn to do this begins with mindfulness. First, on the cushion, we're often given the beginning instruction, and I've given this instruction to folks in an introductory way myself when they come to practice with our group on Thursday nights, about following the breath and paying attention to the breath, either through counting or just following the breath. And so eventually, when we build up some concentration, of course, we can take this with us off the cushion, and this is often the first thing that we learn, or we actually read about this sometimes before we even begin to practice sitting meditation, zazen, and that is to follow the breath as you go through your day. You can always return to the breath. It goes with you everywhere. This is why it's a great focus of, or object of meditation, and it's the object of meditation in Zen as well as other traditions. So, in the Satipatthana Sutta, which is the discourse on mindfulness that the Buddha gave, he lays out 4 foundations of mindfulness, beginning with contemplation of the body. And the first section, no surprise, of contemplation of the body is about mindfulness of the breath. So, how, bhikkhus, does one live contemplating the body in the body? One arouses mindfulness of the object of meditation, namely the breath, which is in front of you. Mindful, you breathe in, and mindful, you breathe out. So from the beginning, mindfulness of the breath has been taught as the practice for everyday life, for paying attention, and for keeping our mindfulness. So in this section on contemplation of the body, the Buddha also gives instructions on mindfulness for some of the other body's activities and postures and sensations. So from this section, we can actually see the early foundation of the Zen story that a lot of us are familiar with, and which I think came up in last Sunday's Dharma chat, which is when we walk, we know we're walking. When we sit, we know we're sitting. When we eat, we know we're eating. Along with the body are three other foundations of mindfulness presented in that sutta, and they include mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of the mind, and mindfulness of mental objects. So in this way, the four foundations encompass our total experience. And Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh underscored why this is so important when he said, "The Zen student must use his or her entire being as an instrument of realization." Of realizing living reality, which is the very substance of Zen. So this is what we do when we sit zazen. We use our entire body as an instrument of realization, and practicing with mindfulness of the breath and the body and our feelings and the mind and its objects. Practicing in this way, we can take our practice with us into everyday life. So in this way, our zazen actually goes with us everywhere that we go. And the longer we practice, the more we may sense this to be how it really is. Our zazen does go with us everywhere we go. And yet, we should be careful in our mindfulness practice. And I say this because, in particular, because of the popularization of mindfulness in our culture generally. It's advertised to us and to people in general as a method of self-improvement, as a kind of life hack to make us better at whatever it is we're already doing. And so mindfulness can easily become a technique in service of our usual self-centered mind, our habitual mind that believes if we could just arrange everything properly and get what it is we want, then our suffering would be relieved. I think we all know that's probably not accurate, but that is our dominant mode these days. So even in the Buddha's four foundations of mindfulness and in the Satipatthana Sutta, we can see the potential danger there. It's not hard to imagine that a focus on the four areas of contemplation of the body, feelings, mind, objects of mind could, if misunderstood, lead us into a self-centered practice where everything that's important happens inside of me. That's where the action is, me, inside. So, Dogen may, in a way, have been warning us about this in Kanjō Koan, in his essay, where he writes that famous line that the self advances and confirms the 10,000 things is called delusion. That the 10,000 things advance and confirm the self is called enlightenment. So, an antidote to this danger of a self-centered practice of mindfulness, is suggested by a guy named Jiryu Mark Rutschman Beiler, and he's a teacher in the Suzuki Roshi lineage. He's a Dharma heir of Mel Weitzman. And he suggests this practice that I mentioned earlier of Menmitsu no Kafu. He says Menmitsu is about caring for things. It means attention to detail. It means continuous intimacy, soft and subtle, warm-hearted and diligent. Suzuki Roshi is quoted as saying that Menmitsu means to be very considerate, very careful in doing things. And I actually originally ran across this concept of Menmitsu no Kafu in an article from the Soto Zen Buddhist Association. And they unpacked the meaning of this phrase, Menmitsu no Kafu, this way. In Japanese, the character mitsu means cotton. Men means close, intimate, dense, secret, and cause family. Fu is wind or manner. So taken as a whole, the expression means a close, intimate family style, as intimate as the threads in finely woven cotton. So a household animated by this principle is characterized by attention unstintingly paid to the connections among people and things, carefully dealing with the most mundane aspects of daily life, such as cups, saucers, rags, clothing, and trash bins, is the arterial connection between zazen as encountered on the cushion and the workaday world where the bodhisattva vow unfolds. I wanted to offer a little bit more here of what they had to say. So continuing, they go on to say, mindful attention to each moment and each thing attended to cultivates a sense of appreciation and gratitude. This develops into an awareness of the sacred within the mundane and a deep reverence for life as Dharma, with no particular need for a deity or other to whom this reverence is directed. Mindful attention to the forms of practice, for ritual and daily life itself becomes our form of devotional practice. Although this mind of devotion can arise naturally, it's not an end in itself. Ultimately, we move past to see things as neither sacred nor mundane, but just as they are, in a way that is both nothing special and truly wonderful. So, as an antidote to the tendency toward self-centered practice, Jiryo Sensei suggests that Menmitsu is an enactment of the immutable truth of the total connectedness of all things that includes but is not fundamentally about looking within or about any kind of inner awareness. Menmitsu isn't about an inner state. It's about taking care of things. It's not about me, it's about the fork, the dish, the person I'm looking at. A shift from me to you goes hand in hand with another transformative shift from what can I get to what can I give. So I'll draw the connection to the chant that we just did a little bit ago. This what can I give becomes a manifestation of the first bodhisattva vow that we chanted. Numberless beings, I vow to serve them. What can I give? So, let's circle back for a moment. A minute ago, I said that Menmitsu no Kafu, according to the Soto Zen Buddhist Association description, means a close, intimate family style, as intimate as the threads in finely woven cotton. We've actually met this Soto family style before in another form, those of us who are currently studying Dogen's Instructions to the Cook. So in Instructions to the Cook, he talks about parental mind and suggests that we should handle everything with the affection and caring concern of a parent raising a child. And as Uchiyama says in his commentary on parental mind, Dogen means we should do this with everything. Every object we handle and each person that we meet should be handled with care and attention. This also applies to every situation and every moment of our day. Each moment, each thing, each person has its own being as we just chanted in the identity of relative and absolute. Each thing has its own being, just as we do, and in an absolute sense, everything has its own dignity and is worthy of respect. So none is more important or more worthy than any other, meaning no moment, no object, no person should be regarded as lesser or greater in this way of relating. So can we practice in this way? Can we afford dignity to each person, object, activity, and moment in the realization that there are no useless things, no unimportant people, no moments that must simply be tolerated or rushed through to get to something better? If we can practice in this way, I think we will find ourselves in intimate relationship to the things we typically consider outside, separate, and lacking in significance from our usual small perspective. As Uchiyama says in his commentary, when you put a pot down roughly, banging it around on concrete or on a tiled sink, it cries out in pain. Clang. If you're still unable to hear that cry, then you can hardly be said to be a person living zazen in your daily life. So, in closing, I'd like to offer a favorite poem of mine. It's not exactly a Zen poem, but I think it expresses an important aspect of what we've been talking about with Menmitsu and parental mind. And that is, to the extent that we can hear the cry of the pots that get banged around, can we also begin to feel our relationship to the things around us changing? Can we perhaps begin to feel the care and support that's always been there, offered to us unconditionally, selflessly in every moment, but that we're unable to see? So here is Everything is Waiting for You by David White. Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. Thank you. So, let's talk. I invite your questions, your comments. How much time do we have? Plenty. Great. Very excited to have a conversation about this. So, please, anyone, start us off. For you, Jim. Hello.
Family style reminds me of, like, I don't know, like Buca di Beppo or something. You know?
Restaurant, right?
Yeah. Big old bowl of pasta.
That's right.
But that's fun. And so unlike what we usually hear from the Soto Shuo.
Yeah.
Also, I can't help but commenting that the poem by David White reminds me so much of the Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage in its sort of cadence. Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you so much for your talk.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, David White, I discovered him entirely by accident, and I recommend to everybody, whenever I get a chance to share this poem, that they go hear him actually. Have you heard it,
Yeah.
Eduardo? Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, his rendition of the poem is amazing, and I only imitated one little bit of his style. He writes a poem, and then when he reads it, he repeats words and sentences. And I've heard different versions, and he doesn't always do it the same way. So I only mimic that slightly, especially at the end with the three everythings, is something that he seems to do consistently when he reads this poem, even though there's only one everything there. But it seems like, as we know in Buddhism, three is a good number. Right? There's something about repeating things 3 times.
One is the lowest number.
That's right. And 2 can be the loneliest number since the number 1. Isn't that what we know? So yeah, he's got other good stuff, but this one in particular spoke to me because I was excited to see immediately the connection to parental mind, because that's something that I had been practicing with for a few years, and that relationship to things on a moment-to-moment basis, to whatever it is that you're engaged with or whoever you're with, that as Thich Nhat Hanh says, whoever you're with is the most important person in the world. That's the most important person to be with, is whoever you're already with. And to be in that relationship to things is, over the long haul, just a wonderful way to experience things. Like any other practice that we do, you don't keep it up 100% consistently all the time, and have to remember, as we do, to come back to our practice. But after a while, it becomes a lot more natural, even when you're in a hurry. It doesn't have to be. Charlotte Selver, the sensory awareness teacher from the Human Potential Movement, had a quote. She said, when she was teaching people sensory awareness, "We are not praying to the God of slowness." So it can be helpful to slow down sometimes, to really be able to be mindful of what you're doing, but that doesn't mean that the only way to be mindful is to move like a turtle. So I always appreciated that quote. Another little tidbit that I picked up in researching this and studying these things is that in one thing that I read that I didn't include in any part of here, one of the little tips on how to handle things in a way that is in line with this Nanmitsu no Kafu family style is to, whenever you have the opportunity, use 2 hands. So if you've ever noticed, I immediately thought of politicians. I remember when we in Cal Poly, when I studied poli-sci, we studied President Johnson, and he would always grab somebody with one hand and grab their forearm with the second one and just shake the whole arm. 2 hands, right? And that turned into him being able to pull people down the line so he could keep the line moving of everybody that wanted to shake his hand. But I imagine, Lyndon Johnson with these great big hands. But
He used 2 hands with his dogs, too.
yeah, with the ears, right? Yeah, that's probably not Nanmitsu no Kafu. But, you can grab something or you can lift it. You can put something down or you can place it. And so you can take care with things. And I really like the idea of it being reciprocal that was expressed, or I hope was expressed in David White's poem, that everything has been there all along, waiting for you, to support you, unconditionally. They're not, despite what he said about the pots being arrogant, judging you. I don't think we're being judged, and I think that's wonderful. So, Other questions or comments?
Thank you very much for your talk. I love the way you made the transition from the kind of study of the mind, the body, the objects of mind, and then, of course, the Heart Sutra which says, forget all that. That's not it. And I was thinking that, family style, we'll call it that.
Yes.
Metsu. Yes. It's like Zen says, keep it simple, stupid. Let's just keep it, but I think it's, to do that, to do that takes us from studying, watching, and it goes into engaging, engaging that little world. And one of the things I loved is that you brought forward that idea of this incredible warmth of being wrapped by the world. The whole world wraps us, even when we think it's not. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really glad that came across, because that was actually a really good description of kind of where I started with what I wanted to try to communicate and share, because I think it's very motivating to me to know that my practice can be that way, that it's not just about there's all my crap again. There's me being me. Hello. Even with those things, even with my bad habits and my destructive thought patterns, I can take, that family style approach to those things as well. Oh, hello. How are you today? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Bad habit that you are. So, thank you. Coach.
Thank you for your talk, your study of this, your practice of it too, comes through very clearly in your talk. And I love that idea that you're practicing with this, and then you found out what it was called, or hey, there's other people doing it, right? I've experienced, I recognize that, and it's always a good feeling.
Yeah.
To do that. It's like, oh, I've already been doing this. It kind of feels like a human thing, right? The human practice, Zen practice, the human thing. That, I'll have to write it down, the
Menmitsu?
Menmitsu,
No coffee.
no, and practice with that and see how that feels. I mean, I'm sort of feeling like it's bringing that tenderness to objects, as well as I've been practicing with that. I think I've talked about it, practicing with that, bringing it to my pain here, pain or discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
It's like bringing compassion or tenderness to those things, rather than fear, tightness. But the main thing that came up for me, I like these ideas and I want to practice with them, both hearing this talk and in my daily life. But the first thing that it came up for is what's keeping me from it. A phrase, probably a common phrase, but my wife's Wisconsin dairy farmer family, that's her grandma. What's keeping you from it? And I find that a very useful phrase.
Yeah.
It's like, where's the block?
Yeah.
This is a good path. I'm seeing this good. And then it would be good to look on the, say, watch out, there's ice ahead. So if you could talk a little bit about what blocks you see that would impede the practice with this. And we'll have to drive to Los Angeles to really get into all the questions.
I'm sure we'll have that opportunity.
It's really got a whole lot out here talk. So thank you.
Thank you. I think it's the usual culprits. And one of the things in particular that I see in my own practice and that I mentioned or alluded to in the talk was just thinking that there's some place or something else that's better that I need to get to than where I am right now. And a very mundane but repetitive example of that in my work life is I spend a lot of time in front of a computer screen and a lot of time with a mouse in my claw of a hand. But if I have to click more than 3 times to get the file that I want, I've noticed I get very irritated. Why is it so hard to get the thing that I want? Why do I have to click all these files to get, who created this file structure? What was the engineer, why isn't this engineer doing his job better? What is wrong with this person? So then I've personalized it into this character that did it wrong. And sometimes it's like, oh wait, I created this file structure. That was me. I invented this. I'm the one who saved it 16 layers down in, sub-level 16 folder, whatever. But I bring up that example because I try to use that little moment of all these clicks from 1 through 15 before I get to level 16 are not important and they're in my way and I need to get through them, and it's okay to be irritated by them because they're meaningless and they're useless and they're not the thing. The thing is number 16. So click, 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 click. Okay, finally I'm here. And in the meantime, what did I just do? What was my experience in this view of the world from Menmitsu no Kafu, and from the sense of David White's poem, what have I just done to all these other clicks, all these other folders, and what am I doing to myself in treating my experience that way? It's the same as being stuck in traffic, which I am now every afternoon on my way home to Napomo from San Luis Obispo. I could just be irritated, which is totally natural, by all these people who are in my way. Why are they all here? What's wrong with these people? Why do they keep slowing down to look at the ocean? Or whatever it is that causes the backup on Ontario Grade just down the road here. Or look at the ocean. I mean, it's become a joke with my daughter. I say it all the time. Look at the ocean. I texted her the other day and I said, photo, and I said, look at the ocean. She's like, yeah, I'm not with you, and still I have to hear you say it. But really, I mean, it's different every time. And so is the traffic jam. Honestly, there's different things going on. People acting like different varieties of dangerous idiot sometimes. But I could spend all that time not wanting to be there, or I could just be in traffic. It's fine. I mean, usually when I get home anyway, after I eat something and sit down, it's like, well, what was the rush for? Everything's just here waiting for me to come home, and I'm gonna go home and see my wife and my daughter, and they're not even in the living room. My wife's in the office doing something, and it's just like, oh, well, this is actually not that different than being in my car, right? So I think, the usual distractions and lack of attention to what's actually in front of us and wanting it to be different, which is pretty fundamental, I guess, since it's what I struggle with every single day. So I think that's, to me at least, the biggest obstacle. Do you have any other thoughts about what might be keeping us from it?
Back to the pain. Physical or emotional pain. It seems to really grip my self-pain. And I think, those are a different kind of pain, right? I'm in a hurry. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's the pain.
Yeah.
And just to be with it, whether it's traffic or a slipper in my finger, whatever it is. I appreciate what you said. It was not a slow motion.
Not praying to the God of
slow
slowness.
motion
Yeah.
is not the solution.
Yeah.
So, no, thank you. We'll talk later. At the lake.
Well, I want to actually add one other thing, and I think I mentioned this to some of you recently. I read something that said that one of the things that cognitive neuroscientists have learned is that the mind-wandering circuit in our brain may have a function of alleviating physical pain. that your mind wanders to take you out of your body. And then when we practice coming back, what do we find out? Oh, everything hurts, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically. And so I think one of the things I'm going to practice with in my daily parental mind Menmitsu practice is, does engaging with the world substitute for the mind wandering in terms of relieving the pain? I think it might, at least a little. You know, when you pay attention to others, you're not so much paying attention to yourself and worrying about your pain. So.
Thank you for ending it. Yeah, appreciate it. It makes me really, in a good way, realize, boy, how much I have, how far along I have to go. You know, like I think about the attention to detail for the you know, things in so many directions. You know, the piles of paper on my desk, or you know, whatever is sitting underneath the bathroom sink. There's these drawers, you know, with all these skeleton little bottles of shampoos through the years that you know haven't been duly attended to, or whatever else it is. So it's inspiring because family style is just a very gentle and approach. It's not stiff, you know. Doesn't feel stiff, which sometimes, at least for me, at the beginning of practice, felt like counting the breath was like a knife edge. Because you just kind of fall off of it, and then it's like kind of like video game roasted. But the one thing I wanted to say about your question on barriers, I think that one main obstacle is the illusion of time. You know, like we're so convinced that the future is there that then we're lost in futuring, and then. But if you really cut through that, then there's like, well, there's really no future to go to. So it really, for me, is like then there's just this to tend to, and then all the energy stays contained. So somehow training and recognizing that future really is a mantra. It's really powerful. Last thing I wanted to share when the baby was crying earlier, that was an opportunity to practice parental mind, and very last one Roshi's words came to mind. You know, that's me. It's crying there.
Thank you, Edward.